This is 757 Saturday Sports Talk with Matt Hatfield on ESPN Radio 94.1.
Hour 1 in the books, Hour 2 coming your way now here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk, powered by Larry King Law. If you're injured in an accident, you call 757-595-8100 for Larry King. Matt Hatfield here with, and at this time joined by a special guest. He is with the News in Advance out there in Lynchburg. Newsadvance.com is the website. Give him a follow at News Advance, and follow him on Twitter at Damien Sordelett. We say hello to our buddy Damien Sordelett here on ESPN Radio 94.1 to preview some Liberty Syracuse. Damien, how's life treating you?
Oh, it's going good right now. Kind of wish I was in Syracuse covering the game in person, but with the travel restrictions put in place this week by adding Virginia to the restricted travel list to New York. If I had gone, I probably would have been forced to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival, and not actually be able to go to the Carrier Dome. So done what other beat writers have done so far this year, and be covering it remotely. And kind of weird, but it's just times we're living in, and looking forward to kickoff here in about 50 minutes.
Very strange indeed, although you give everybody the best coverage when it comes to Liberty football and athletics there with the News Advance. And, because of the travel ban, like you said, you're not able to go there. How has this season been different for you in terms of coverage? I mean, I'm imagining you're doing more Zooming when it comes to the interview sessions, or have you had a little bit of not face-to-face, but at least close distance with some of the coaches and players, if you will?
It's all been virtual.
Okay.
Haven't had a chance to be in the same room with those guys at all. Even the post-game interviews, stay in the press box and do it virtually through Microsoft Teams or Zoom, whichever one is the choice of the day. And it's been kind of weird because, last year I got accustomed to at least going to some practices, seeing what was going on, kind of getting a feel for, players, what they're doing, all that stuff. And now it's just show up for game day, and then you get to see which players have made strides, which players are maybe taking a step back. And it's kind of weird not having that sense of, what to expect leading up to a game, just from seeing it in person. So it's been a little weird as a beat writer not having that access, but at the same time, everyone's going through the same thing right now. And, Liberty's trying to do its best to get us whatever access we can. And, it's been different. You love the face-to-face interactions and getting the chance to know these players, know these coaches, and you're just trying to adapt on the fly now with, having to do everything virtually and not being able to see these guys up in person.
Well, Liberty's going for its first 5-0 start since 2008, also trying to get their first ever win over an ACC team. And I think we had you on a year ago on the station talking about the game when Syracuse was playing them, and the chances of them getting that win, it looked pretty decent. Didn't turn out that way for them. They're 0-8 all-time against ACC foes. Syracuse has struggled mightily, although they are number 1 in the nation with 14 takeaways. As you look at this game, how similar, how different is it from a year ago to now?
It's vastly different. I mean, Liberty's got, 9 new starters on defense, a brand new quarterback, a new starting running back. The injury report today, Noah Frith is out, so is Javian Lofton. Those are 2 explosive outside receivers. C.J. Yarbrough, another big outside receiver, is doubtful, which means there's the possibility C.J. Daniels, a true freshman who they were planning on playing in the slot, could be seeing more outside time. Now there's a possibility, Kevin Shaw, DJ Stubbs, DeMario Douglas are going to get more touches on the outside, and the running game is going to become that much more vital for Liberty if you're not going to have those outside receivers from Malik Willis. So, and then you look at Syracuse, Tommy DeVito's not playing at quarterback, and you get Rex Culpepper, a guy who hasn't made a start since 2017. That, coincides with, the fact that he had to battle and beat testicular cancer in 2018, and, they've moved him from quarterback to tight end. Now he's back at quarterback. And you look at the defense, they might get Tyrell Richards back for this one, but it's a defense that's allowed 300-some-odd rushing yards a game the last 2 weeks against Georgia Tech and Duke. And speaking on the offensive side, Syracuse top 4 running backs might not even be available. The top 2 have opted out for the year. Sean Tucker's battling an injury, and it's going to be a different type of feel for this game, I would say, just because there's so many unfamiliar faces for this one that it's like two completely different teams will be out there at on the Carrier Dome turf.
You know, it's crazy, Damien. We just had on Tim Kirch, an ESPN baseball analyst, to break down for us the LCSs, the Braves, and the Dodgers, as well as the Astros and the Rays, and just how unpredictable baseball is. College football, and you just hit on it with the injury reports for Liberty and Syracuse, and we know Liberty's scheduled to take on Virginia Tech at Lane Stadium November 7th, and all the issues Tech has had with its defense of these guys not being available with this pandemic and everything. I mean, with college football, as a guy covering this, you pretty much have to have that flip card handy at all moments, don't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now, Liberty's been fairly decent on defense in terms of injury. The only one who's out for today's game is safety Tim Kid Glass, transfer from NC State, who sat out last year and was expected to start at Rover. But Liberty's defense has actually been, relatively intact this year. The same starting groups been out there, the exception of Emmanuel Dabney didn't start the first game at cornerback. Quentin Reese got to start, but Dabney's been a consistent guy in there. Week 1 against Western Kentucky, and these last 3 weeks starting opposite Chris Megginson. So it's been, the defense has been in good shape. Special teams, we saw last week 3 touchdowns. Liberty's made a priority to make sure special teams hasn't been lost in the shuffle of cutting back stuff because of the pandemic. And really those two facets of the game, defense consistently through the year, and special teams now in the last couple of weeks has been really shining for Liberty, and I think that's helped offset an inconsistent offense.
Talking with Damien Sordelett of the News Advance. Newsandadvance.com is the website. It's ESPN Radio 94.1 here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk as we break down for you the Liberty Flames, unblemished on the year, taking on the Syracuse Orange out of the ACC. A huge opportunity at 12 noon today up in Syracuse, New York, for Hugh Freeze and his Flames to get a landmark signature win, if you will. And one of my favorite names, my man Ralph Rusens on the defensive line. Tell us more about him for Liberty.
Oh, gosh. He's the first Latvian-born player to play at the FBS level, and actually was the first one to play at the Division I level when he suited up for Liberty when they were still FCS and in the Big South Conference. And he's a difference maker for them in the middle at 6'6", 320. Go back to last year's game against Syracuse, it was his coming-out party. He had 9 tackles and a sack, and he was a relative unknown to a lot of Liberty fans prior to that game because he really hadn't had that much playing time. And he's been a disruptive force in there. Hasn't been through the first 4 weeks, 13 tackles and a sack through 4 weeks, but his presence up the middle and commanding double teams has allowed guys like Darrell Johnson, Trayshawn Clark, Steven Sings, Jay Sanders opportunities to get off the edge and get after the quarterback. And that's been a big reason for why this defensive line's been so good this year is Rusens has been able to absorb double teams and still manage to find ways to be disruptive. The production doesn't want the stats don't speak for the entire story of how productive he's been in the middle. And he said earlier this week they couldn't Liberty can't get so star sickness, and he brought up a Latvian saying of star sickness of you feel like you're high and mighty, and especially in the sports world, and then you let off the gas for a little bit, and then you go, oh, we just failed. And his message to those guys this week has been, don't get stuck in star sickness. Focus on the fact that we still need to get better. We're not at the top of the world yet. We've beaten 4 teams that have a combined record of 1-11. And we're playing an ACC team that, even though that Syracuse only has 1 win, they still got ACC talent, and the backups are ACC talent. So they're keeping themselves grounded, and they're also keeping in mind that last year they played really well and still lost, and they have a chip on their shoulder, and that's something that's really carried them this week during practice. I
love that. Humble, 6'6", 325-pound Latvian terror there in Ralph Rusens. And really, Damien, that's got to be the formula either for these non-power fives, the group of fives, whatever you call them, independent here in Liberty's case, to have these upsets. And we have it every week where an unranked beats a ranked team. I go back to that first week with Louisiana knocking off Iowa State. And Syracuse is far from ranked. And they do have ACC talent, and they are in the Atlantic Coast Conference, a league that Liberty's never beaten someone from. But if you're going to get that formula for success to pull off the upset, you really got to have a player like Rusens who can just disrupt the game, occupy blocks, and be a game wrecker, or you got to be able to run the ball effectively, which is probably the first and foremost on the game plan against the Syracuse defense, is it not?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head about the two things Liberty needs to do is it's get pressure up the middle on defense and then be able to establish the run. Liberty's 7th in the nation this year in rushing yards per game at 250, and we've mentioned Syracuse ails against stopping the run. I believe they're like 70th, 71st first in the nation in stopping the run. There's only been 76 teams that have played this year. Louisiana Monroe last week made the commitment to stopping the run and forcing Liberty to pass. And I don't know if Syracuse is going to go with the same model this week. But, you got an offensive line at Liberty that's got 3 seniors, a sophomore and a junior. They've got the moxie to want to run the ball. And then you add in the return of Bryce Matthews, the Ole Miss transfer, back from injury. He's been cleared to play today. And you add in the guys that have been rotating in. Liberty's going to want to run the ball behind Josh Mack, Peyton Pickett, and then, throw in Malik Willis getting his carries in. If Liberty wants to have success, they're probably going to have to mimic what Georgia Tech and Duke have done in the last 2 weeks, be able to establish the run, and then force their safeties, those ball hawks that have combined for 8 interceptions this year, to creep closer to the line of scrimmage, and then maybe you could take a shot. To who does Liberty take that shot to? We don't know, because if you're out your big playmakers in Frith, Lofton, and Yarbrough, who's doubtful for this game, you're left with some options that aren't as tall, aren't as physical. And you don't have a Antonio Gandy Golden you can turn to this year and throw it up to and, bet that he's going to catch it. Liberty's now in the boat of, they've got to find guys who haven't stepped up this year and make sure they can step up in this game.
The odds makers have Liberty as a 2.5-point favorite today at Syracuse, and I'll get you out on this. It's a 2-part question. 1, you surprised by that at all given last year's result? And B, it's been relatively smooth sailing for Liberty here when you look at the results here of Western Kentucky, Florida International, North Alabama, UL Monroe, 4-0 start here. The next 2 weeks, scheduled opponents against Southern Miss and Virginia Tech, and we know Southern Miss's game with UTEP has been postponed over virus issues. Virginia Tech's problems have been well documented. Beyond today, win or lose, it's very, dare we say, cloudy, Damien?
Yeah, I would guess so. Liberty does have 2 open dates, Halloween weekend and Thanksgiving weekend. And, UMass is getting back on the schedule. UMass is trying to play, and Liberty had scheduled a game against UMass on Thanksgiving weekend before the pandemic started, so Liberty could get a game back if needed then. But hopefully Southern Miss has things under control by the time next week that the 2 teams can play, and that would be something that Liberty would want because you have them on the schedule and you want it. But I think Virginia Tech is still in the mindset of trying to soldier on. Granted, they don't have the off-week Halloween weekend, so anything could happen between now and then that could disrupt the November 7th game. So, you keep your fingers crossed and hope things happen. Hugh Freeze has said, we're going to be like, Hugh Freeze has said this repeatedly, Liberty is going to be blessed if it can get through a season without losing a game. And I think realistically he's conditioned his mind that it's, there's a possibility something's going to happen. And I'll go back to the other one. Am I surprised that Liberty's a favorite in this one? No.
Oh, no. Okay.
No. They were favored last year against Rutgers. We can hound on Rutgers all we want for how bad that program is, but it was the first time Liberty was favored to beat a Power 5 team. And I guess the odds makers are looking at it's a Hugh Freeze team. You have a dual threat quarterback. This might be the chance for them to do it. And, I think it was key that line dropped from 3 to 2.5 because now Liberty can win by a field goal, and you still, you can, if you put a bet on the game, you can still win it now instead of a 3-point favorite and, field goal to win it. Now it's a push. So, I think it's worthy for Liberty to be there, and now it's time for, as Hugh Freeze has said, now they have to prove that they belong in those conversations of being favored to win and being, receiving votes in the top 25 polls.
Noon kickoff today with Liberty at Syracuse. Make sure you follow Damien Sordelett on Twitter and his coverage in the News in Advance in Lynchburg. Newsadvance.com is the website. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game today, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely, Matt. I appreciate you having me on again.
Always. Damien Sordelett, our guest here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk, talking about the undefeated Flames of LU Liberty University taking on the 1-3 Orange of Syracuse, the team leading the country in takeaways here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk. And Dino, that's kind of an interesting game here with, Virginia Tech and UVA getting the lion's share of the attention in our state for college football. We know closer to the home front here with Old Dominion and Norfolk State and Hampton and those schools not playing. Liberty's kind of been forgotten about around here in the 757. We had a couple of players go out there and some of them left, like Tank Land, who's been well documented. But nonetheless, this is a big opportunity for them today.
They could make some noise. I tell you what, great for the program if they get that win in the Carrier Dome at Syracuse. They may not be getting a lot of attention in this state, but you can't argue with the record and the progress that program has made since they've moved up.
Yeah, certainly doing well. We'll take a timeout and come back with Eddie Payton. Yeah, the brother of Sweetness, the late, great Walter Payton of Chicago Bears fame. Eddie talks about his time in the NFL and HBCU, his alma mater, higher in prime time. It's coming your way on ESPN Radio 94.1.